Hi, this is Angela Coulter, your Conscious Transformation Ascension Guide, originator of Trinity Energy Progression, bringing you this week's Living the Shift. So it's been several weeks since I've been on doing, since the last episode was the week before Thanksgiving, was the last episode of this live stream podcast. But, there's been a lot going on, and I haven't taken a break in a while, and it just worked out that way because first was Thanksgiving in the United States. And I just wanted to have that weekend off. Excuse my yawn. But then, last week I was traveling across the country to a nice, beautiful remote place to have like a retreat weekend and what we call immersion weekends with a couple of friends of mine. And, you know, coming back fresh from that this last couple of days, it's really I'm looking at what do I want to talk about now, because there's a lot that keeps on changing. There's a lot that is shifting for us. And, I've talked about, I think, I always think, well, I've talked about like everything over the years with this live stream and with my other podcasts that I do at Sarah C. Gavagnoni, Ascended World on Monday mornings. And although it changes and evolves as we go along, but it's almost like it's important for us to continually remember some of the core concepts, core understandings that are truly important to evolving and moving forward beyond where we are. And so coming back to two of these really, top of mind: connection and awareness. Two things that are core to all levels of our consciousness. And it helps us every step of the way, in terms of how we can see the bigger picture right there, and what to do about it, right? So we get so caught up in the do's, the do's, the do's. What do I do? What do I do? How do I do this? Do I use this? Do I use this tool? Do I use this kind of ritual? Do I use this kind of ceremony? Do I go to the doctor? Do I listen to what's on the internet? All this kind of stuff. Do I listen to my friends, my family, and all that kind of stuff? And when we talk about consciousness, we've sort of gotten lost. We've really immersed ourselves this year in a collective deepening of density instead of lightening of density. In many cases, because there are so many who are like lost in fear, they've given away all of their own consciousness to what's going on around them, to what people are saying, and so we have these challenges that are coming up because it was almost like we came so far in consciousness and awakening. And then it was almost like we felt like, oh my gosh, we have to counterbalance it. So we have to create this entire, low density, fear-based, anxiety-based, anger-based, kind of balance, right? Because we talk about the yin yang, but that's all duality. And so one of the things for us to truly, when we go back to the basics, and, no matter how advanced we are, no matter how many decades we've been doing this, or 5 days, excuse me, whoo, I did not yawn once this morning until I got on here. So obviously, big topic, as I always call that, infusion of spiritual energy. We to go back to the basics. It's all about the connection and awareness, right? So number one, first priority over everything else is how to listen to your own guidance, right? Connection isn't just your own guidance, but connection as higher consciousness, having an open connection to the non-embodied higher consciousness that is you. Wow, excuse me. And the collective. And the second is awareness of what we're doing that perpetuates separation, the illusion of separation and duality, as well as what's going on around us and what reflects back to us, because as the creators of our realities, we then see everything that we're not seeing ourselves reflected back to us through what's around us, what we create in our realities. So if something is a challenge, and this is really like 101, just spiritual awareness 101, but it's something for us to be consciously always looking at the new way to see things, right? Something else that might need to be looked at. Something that seems to be not aligned with you, seems to be uncomfortable, seems to be confusing, or fear driving or anger driving, all triggers what we call triggers. And all those triggers are things that go on inside of us, right? So we teach that in Trinity Energy Progression. And actually, everything I talk about really is based on this level of having a new sense of consciousness in terms of, let me talk a minute though, because there are some things I do want to talk about having to do with connection. When we talk about connecting, right, we talk about it as an external thing. Like, oh, I have to connect with something. I have to connect with someone. I have to connect. And I even use it all the time. We have to connect with higher consciousness, like connecting with higher consciousness, connecting with each other. And then we go, wow, this is crazy. This is crazy. And we think, okay, but then when we think of connection, like, we think of like a plugging in. That means it's reaching out to something. When true connection is releasing partitions that prevent that connection, that wholeness and that oneness to begin with. So the key is for us to focus on how to allow connection versus attaining it. Much different energy and much different perspective. When I've been going on these little immersion retreat weekends with several close friends of mine, very close friends of mine, and we are just so compatible in terms of vibrational discussion and just being and connecting and being connected. It's like we go to remember like what it's like to just be connected all the time, and we go to we sometimes go to each other's houses. We're all over the country. Sometimes we go to different places like we did here, and we, rented a cabin that was on a mountain on the ocean in an island, and it was about as remote as you could get. And there was one day we didn't even get out of pajamas until I think 4:30 for maybe 3 hours of the day. And then we got back into pajamas because we spent all this time, and it wasn't connecting through this, though there was a lot of chatting, but there's the connection here, and there's the connection of, okay, what is there for us to let go of so we can see a clearer picture of the bigger picture, a clearer view of the bigger picture. And it's funny, it sort of reminded me of that when I came to get on here, because on my homepage I have a picture from sunrise one morning, or right before sunrise, and it was just, that was from the bedroom. We had a big open, lofty bedroom. And that's what we looked at every morning, every night. It was the view, and it was just so one and fluid with each other, with nature, with allowing. And that was pretty much a key term, all weekend was allowing. And that's really what connection is. Connection is allowing, not attaining. It's a much different energy, because it's remembering that we're already connected. So when we have all of these experiences, all of these, efforts to be connected, we be connected. Make sure you're connected, or connect in. It's really not go and do that. It's allow it and let go, because actually our natural state is all connected in oneness. And when we do that, it's effortless. So, for example, we talk a lot about, in the spiritual community, people talk about, oh, how do we do telepathy? How do I do telepathy? Or I have to practice telepathy. And it's really, I was there too when I first came into doing this more than a decade ago. Well, actually, decades ago, because I actually explored this early on in my adulthood. But the thing is, the realization that I came to is that actually telepathy is letting go of the partitions that we believe we hold in separation, and allowing connection to our bigger self, the collective, to how to into the seamless integration of consciousness. And when we do that, guess what? Telepathy is effortless. And then we think of it in a different way. It's because then we're pulling from, if I know you and I allow our connection as one, in the oneness and the wholeness, then we're going to have aligned concepts. It's just going to be filtered through our individual understandings. So what happens is when we try to do telepathy, what we tend to do is I'm going to project a thought, right? And we think I'm going to project a thought, and then there's the first step into even more separation. So now you're adding filters to have to weed through to get the message or understanding. So to send something telepathy, we think we've got to think something and send a thought. Well, that's first of all a filter, because any thought is a filter on individual experience, and how you see it or frame it would be based on that. And then you put it out there. You put it out there into the oneness, and then the other person has to know where to look, and then and then understand with the same filter to get the same information. So they could get the same information and then have a different filter and then totally different message. So that's where it gets bungled up, right? So it's when we're in oneness and when we're in wholeness and we're in a constant practice of being there, is that it's effortless, and you don't even think about like what we call telepathy, because guess what? We're automatically connected. I have so many that I know that's what I mean. We focus on the groundwork. We focus on going into and living as the wholeness, right, and higher consciousness. And when we do that, all of our individual experiences reflect that. And so they might be individually different based on our individual journeys. But what happens is then we get back together, and like we might not talk for a week, a month, a year, and then all of a sudden it's like ping, it's time. Like it's not even like you hear the voice saying it's time to contact that. Sometimes you do, but sometimes you just sort of feel like, oh, hey, I feel like I'm connected. I'm consciously connecting with somebody, this one individual person, and maybe I need to. I feel like reaching out to them. And usually that's when it's time to talk, time to get together. I mean, I have a friend that I see like once a year. Usually we go for a day hike, and then we have a great time, an endless amount of very connected energy and conversation. And then it's great. And then we hug, and we're like, till next time. And then it's like, 6 months, a year. And then before that happens again. And that's great. Because then we're not forcing things through expectations, through cultural, demands, through all that kind of stuff. But then there are others that I talk to all the time. There are others, and all of it or connect with all the time. And when we do that kind of stuff, and we change our focus on how we are connected with others, to realizing that we are allowing the connection versus forcing it or creating it, right, or pushing it. And saying, well, whether or not we're physically connected has nothing to do with how we are in wholeness, because and that's up to the individual, right? So the more the individual is allowing and focusing on opening up and releasing the chatter and allowing their wholeness as divine consciousness, as their higher self, as all of that, the more an individual does that, the easier it is for them to connect with others who are doing that, which is then a natural, like, sort of boulder rolling downhill, because then you just tend to then connect with people that easily. And then you find it more, heavy when you have to connect with somebody else in a different way that is not heart-based or whole-based, really whole-based, right? And which tends to be heart-based. And then and so that's when we have these seamless connections. It's funny, I went on a retreat with somebody, was it 4 years ago now, a friend of mine that I made and been on other retreats with. But anyway, so she'd take me someplace. So I was learning the ropes, and with the specific purpose of me learning the ropes so that I could hold retreats there. And so it was just she and I for a week, and it was great. And she was so surprised. Does not practice Trinity, just something very similar, but talks a lot about oneness stuff. And so what happened is we went away, and she's like, I am so amazed at how seamless our connection is. And I said, yeah, but that's what I live. That's how I exist now. And so those who I connect with are the ones who exist that way too. So we would be doing something, or we would just be doing something as simple as like doing dishes after breakfast, because it was a house rental. And and then like one of us would say something and the other one would be like, oh, I was just about to say that, or suggest that we do something, or suggest that we go someplace or whatever, or have a thought or an idea. And it was so like back and forth, like, wow. And we would laugh because we could be walking down the street and think, okay, I'm going this way, and both of us would just go that way and nobody would even say anything. And she goes, I'm not used to this kind of connection with most individuals. I'm like, yeah, but that's for us, that's the goal. Like, it feels great. And then it's so easy. It doesn't feel like an effort to be with others, you know. So that's part of the really cool. I mean, these are really cool side effects. They're really incredible experiences that we have when we allow that kind of connection. So when we talk about connection and awareness, like that is a goal. And so we put all this effort to, oh, well, how do I connect? And then we use all these tools, rituals and circles and counterclockwise and clockwise and all this other kind of stuff to connect. And it's like, really, we only create those tools. And it's not that the tools are bad. It's that we give them the energy. We give them the energy so that we can remember our own power in that connection. And so the key is that we remember that, and we stop giving our power away. We give our power away to the things we give our power to, which is very interesting, right? Think about that. We are the ones that put the power and the energy into things that, you know, give us what we believe, that connection. And we forget that we're the ones who give them the power, right? That's sort of a game we play. So the key is to get past that. You know, what I talk to people about a lot is, okay, it's great for you to get there where you can access this because you haven't been able to access it consciously before. And then it's for you to get past that, to realize that I am giving the power to this thing that's giving me the power, that I'm allowing to give me the power. So if I just don't go those extra steps and allow myself to have that power, allow myself to understand that I'm the one that's providing all that and reflecting back to me, then I can let that go and I can just be there already. And then there's no effort and it becomes effortless. So, you know, what I suggest is like, you know, like doing that, like when we talk about meditation every day, it's not just what we call passive meditation, which is just sitting there and clearing the mind, but that is very important. And that's a very important first step is learning how to, remembering how to clear the chatter of the egoic mind to listen to the silence, because in the silence is where we are connected and we understand. And we don't need the words. It's like we understand and we know before we have the words. If we do nothing else, and practice that, that would be a huge step in evolution in our mission and our project of the Earth Project, the Earth Mission, and moving forward now into what's next. If we did that, that would just take us like leaps and bounds, all of us, if we all just did that. And then it's allowing yourself to allow connection with others based on that versus on the chatter of the mind and the chatting and all that kind of stuff. And not just with others, but with nature, with Earth itself, because all of that's part of us as well. And so when we go, like when I go to places like this past weekend, it was like in the San Juans, up at the Canadian border in Washington, it was incredible. And I forget, like I leave because there's this bubble. It's like we go into another dimension when you take the ferry over. And I forget until I go back, and it's like so breathtakingly easy to be in that place of connection all the time. And it's not even an effort. It just is. And that becomes who you are being. And so it's really important for us to take time to do that. So whether it's A, the first step is meditation every day. B is allowing and being aware. So the second part in this awareness is just being aware of where those areas aren't serving us anymore. So where we're not connecting in a way that is natural and holistic and from here versus here, or because we think we're supposed to, because it's a certain relation, because I've been friends or whatever with this person forever, because we're related, because we continue to have that embedded in our expectation on what we do to connect with others moving forward. And we take all that away, and it's like, So where am I? Like, where am I in wholeness? And oh, I feel that other individual facet of me as the wholeness, which is a friend, a connection, or whatever. Oh, it's time for us to connect about something that that parallels in our individual journeys. And when we do that, it's always really it's crazy. It's crazy. We laugh because, especially when you talk to somebody a lot and you're like, oh, so what's been going on? Well, this and this, and even it might be very individual and to their own day to day experience. It's always the same kind of. It's always in the same area of understanding. It's in the same area of energy of things to shift, because we are as collective and we are as individuals. We are as we are collective. So when I talked about, so when Sarah C. Gavignoni and I talk on Mondays about an ascended world, and we talk about it as a collective energy share, it's so seamless, because even though it's collective, it's individual, and that's why we start with the conversation that has to do with us individually, and then we back it out to look at what's in the collective, because it's no different. It's just individually wrapped. So the connection is key, the first step. And if you're not doing that, that's the one that if people ask, well, what can I do? What can I do to help? What can I do to help change the world? I'm like, this one thing. If we all connected from there, allowed our connection instead of pushed for it, it changes the entire energy of everything we do and everything we are. And then the second part of that, which is, it's all interrelated, so it's really a challenge to separate it out, but it's the awareness part. It's actually, it's a chicken or the egg thing. Is it the awareness first and the consciousness and the connection after, or vice versa? Well, really, awareness has to do with being observant without egoic chatter. So awareness is truly taking responsibility for our individual journeys, taking responsibility that I am the creator of my entire experience and my entire set of realities, and that we have a collective one as well as an individual one, but also that in taking the self-responsibility, it's like if something comes up in my own reality, right, that triggers me, that makes me angry. And so when I say triggers, it means makes me angry, nervous, fearful, judgmental, blaming, shaming, all kinds of stuff like that. If something like that comes up, that is a dual base, meaning externalized, because anything that's dual base means there's a me and a not me, and I'm pushing it outside of me so that I can look, so it can reflect back. And when you do that, so then we forget that it's reflecting back to us from what's inside. The thing is to have the awareness saying, okay, so if that's triggering me, what am I holding that's causing that to reflect back to me? And then what is there for me to do to change that? So that then, because all that chatter and all of that duality-based separation, energy and emotion has to do with preventing us from being in that connected state. And so when we look at that and say, okay, so I'm ready to resolve that, or people say clear it, or they say heal it, but I don't use the word healing, because I look at things as allowing to flow and allowing instead of healing, because there's nothing, I'm really never sick. I'm just in dis-ease, right? Disease, which I think is funny. But because of externalization and because of separation-based energies and emotions, and when I take that back and take that power back, and I look at that and say, okay, so what's the trigger that I am originating that's reflecting back to me? Then what is it? Then guess what? Then actually I take a whole lot of energy off of trying to push it onto other people. And then my connection becomes even more seamless, because I'm not blaming other people for stuff. I'm not judging them for stuff. And including myself, right? Because I'm just like, oh, well, why do I have that judgment? Why do I have that fear? Why do I have that anxiety? Why do I have that anger? Why do I have that blame or shame? What is there for me to change there when I look at things from the bigger picture? And when we keep on turning that around, eventually that's our focus, right? And then everything in between is simply allowing connection. And so much gets resolved when we allow that. It's so much easier too. And so, going beyond the everyday with that, I mean, and I work in it with other people, I teach it, but when I come to that, so when we do this quarterly gathering, to just connect, it's a fabulous thing, because then we do what I call a deep dive, and we do a lot of energy work together. Some would call it hypnosis work, but it's really all the same difference. And we really, really get into some meaty stuff that we wouldn't see otherwise. We wouldn't allow ourselves to see otherwise, because we would be too distracted with the chatter. So it's really nice. And then we get into a place that just, like I said, the cabin that we rented was fabulous, because we had the whole floor. On the second floor was a one big bedroom with beds and a couch and everything else. And you wake up in the morning and just the sunrise and the sunset in the evening and the water and the islands. It was just, when we talk about connecting, it's like there, you just have no choice, because you're just there all the time when you're there. So, and you don't have to be like in a place like that all the time, but I'm just saying it's nice to go to a place where you're not distracted by, oh, I have to do this, I have to talk to this person, I have to tend to this and whatever. And it's just being, because it's a practice for us to get into, so that we're there every day eventually, to a place where I am always being, I am always in a place of allowing connection. And it doesn't matter what's going on around me, because I still allow that connection to be solid in my reality, to be my MO. Because then the more I do that, the easier it is for me to understand guidance, to know what there is to be, to know what there is to do from the guidance. And then that changes the world. That changes everything. So that's what my home play is for you this week. Glad to be back. But go ahead, and I want you to take some time and make sure that you're prioritizing you, to allow the habit of connection, to allow yourself to be in that place, and to change the definition of connection from going outside to plugging in inside, and really allowing all of those shields and layers and distractions to melt away, so that we can stay in that place of awareness, right? Because actually, the more we stay in that place of allowing that connection, we stay in awareness, and then we are more connected within ourselves and expanded consciousness. And then it's just this chicken and the egg thing. It just is like a snowball thing. So that's the thing to do this week. Take some time, and just, if you can go for a walk in nature. Nature is great for that. But it allows us, and don't look at the phone. Turn the phone off. I mean, some of us use the phone. When I go for a walk, I have the phone in my pocket, not to use it, but to have it, do my steps, to record my steps. But turn off your ringer, turn off the phone, get away from the phone, and focus on that presence. Because when we get into that presence, it's the connection, it's the awareness, and this is core to anything we do from here. So play with that this week, and we'll see you next time. This is Angela Coulter signing off with this week's Living the Shift. Have a great one.